Hi there, good morning. I'm Lauren, I'm your host for today. I'm just going to wait a few more moments for everybody to join. Just while we do wait for people to join, I will just let you all know that today's session is being recorded. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes for everybody to join and then we'll get started on today's session. Brilliant. So I think that gives enough time for everybody to who's going to be joining today to join. So as I've just said, I'm just going to run through a few bits of housekeeping. I'll introduce myself, who I am as your host today, and just run over a little bit about what we are going to be covering in today's session. So today's session is regarding finding opportunities in the public sector. Just to let you know, as I have mentioned for the people who joined straight away, that today's session is being recorded. Now the slide deck and the recording will be emailed out to anybody who's registered for today's session, just to let you know, so you can run over anything that we've covered. If you have got any questions on the back of today's session also, please do get in touch with us and we're happy to answer any questions that you may not think of in today's session. The chat function and Q&A function are switched on today, so if you do have any questions throughout today's session, please do pop them, preferably in the Q&A function, and I will keep an eye on them. Please, with it being only myself hosting today, if I don't get to your question until the end, there will be plenty of time for questions at the end of the session, so if you think of them as we go, do just please pop them in the chat or Q&A function, as we said, and I'll come to those at the end. If you do want to introduce yourself, say hello in the Q&A and chat function as well, you are all welcome to do so. But we may as well move on to introductions. So I'm Lauren from the organisation Go for Growth. So Go for Growth is an organisation designed specifically to help providers find and secure work in the public sector. So whether that's providers who worked for the public sector before but are looking to further develop their knowledge, or whether you're a provider who's never actually worked for the public sector at all before and you're looking to navigate how to do so. So we will help you build and develop your knowledge through sessions such as today's, whether it's a webinar, whether it's in-person events. We host one-to-one sessions, and my role within Go for Growth is mainly working closely with providers. I do one-to-one mentoring sessions to figure out how we can help you. Like if you're bidding for an opportunity and you find yourself stuck at a certain barrier, will help you overcome that barrier, but also I'll develop content, so such as the content that's going into today's session, I will develop that content for it then to be put across in a session such as today's. Also across our social media platforms, our YouTube channel, all things such as that. So that is me, that's Lauren, your host, and what we are going to be looking at covering today then is the public sector. So we're going to be looking at who the public sector are. If you're looking to work for the public sector, if you don't know up to now what kind of products it is that the public sector buy or how to navigate them, that is today's session. We'll be looking at procurement portals. Procurement portals are the way that the public sector advertise their opportunities. So we're going to have a look into a couple portal examples and discuss how to work those. And then finally, we're going to have a look into networking and social media, how you can use these two things to build a relationship with the public sector and better understand how to get involved. Perfect. So I'm going to move on then, we'll crack straight on into it and move on to the public sector. So who they are, what the public sector buy, and a little bit about public sector spend goals. So the public sector then, so they are the portion of the economy that are owned and run by the UK government or the government, and they are essentially the provider of public services in the UK. So in order to provide these public services, the services must of course be bought, and that's where you as a provider would come in. So a few examples of what the public sector may be buying from providers such as yourself would include, say, for example, education services, emergency services, healthcare, housing, like refuse collection, social services. That is just to name a few, but those are the things that you as a provider, that's what you would be providing to the public sector. And the government actually set a mandate back in 2019 for 33% of all UK public sector spend to be spent with SMEs by 2022. Now, whilst that mandate is only for central government, the wider public sector are also committed to developing the relationship with smaller organisations as well. So that's including the not-for-profit organisations, so the voluntary third sectors. So it is a good measure for all when we do say that the hopes are for 33% of all public sector spend to be with the SME VCSE community. Now, we can actually see this coming into play with the work that Go for Growth actually do. So Go for Growth, as I've said, we are working with smaller providers who are looking to work with the public sector. But for us to be able to do this, we need funding ourselves. And the way that Go for Growth actually work is we've partnered with 11 public sector bodies across the UK, say, for example, Barnsley Council, Bradford Council. We've partnered with the NHS, Lewisham and Greenwich Trust. So they fund us to help provide services to you, to provide the support. And those doing that, it shows the commitment to building the relationship with the smaller community, or the smaller business community, should I say. Which actually takes me on to my next slide. So the fact that the public sector have the ambition to work with the smaller organisations or the smaller business community, it is important for you to then understand how to reach the public sector. And that would be through the procurement portals, through the government hosted portals. Those are the things that we're going to cover off in today's session. So we're going to have a look a little bit at some procurement portals. We're going to have a look at some examples of the portals. I'm going to show you the government hosted portals, or at least one of them, which is going to be Contracts Finder. And then I'm also going to do a quick demonstration of Your Tender, which is a portal used by 28 local councils across Yorkshire and the Humber. So the majority of public sector tenders then, as we've said, are advertised using a thing called a procurement portal. For those of you who've never actually worked with the public sector before, you may not know what a procurement portal is, which is why we're going to go into it in a lot more detail today. If you have bid for public sector work before, you may be more familiar with these portals, but you may have only come across one or two, but also if you haven't used them in a long time, they can be tricky things to navigate, which is why we're going to do a demonstration today and also quickly show you the government portal Contracts Finder, so you have a better idea of how to use those services. So each public sector body then will have their own portal. So I will keep coming back to Barnsley Council as an example, as it's just my local council. So Barnsley Council use a portal called Your Tender. That's the one that I've said we are going to be using as a demonstration later in today's session. And like I said, it is also used, other than Barnsley Council, by 27 other councils across Yorkshire and the Humber. We will come back back to Your Tender in a short while when we do the demonstration on how to navigate that portal. But some other examples of portals that you may have come across, or that you may come across when you do look to start working with the public sector, may be, for example, Artemis. Artemis hosts the NHS Health Family Portal. There is Intend hosts portals for a lot of colleges and universities across the UK. And there's Jagger. So Jagger are the portal host for Ministry of Justice. And that is just to name a few. There are so many procurement portals out there for you to access, but really the more you look for opportunities, the more opportunities that you bid for, the more of these portals you come across, and the more of a second nature it is to navigating them and using them. You'll see when I am going to the demonstration of Your Tender, we'll look at the registration. The registration for these portals does tend to be rather similar. They're looking for the same bits of information. Now, this will differ ever so slightly, but it does tend to be quite similar. So I've discussed particular procurement portals there, but I do want to discuss a little bit about the government hosted portals as well. So one thing about the government hosted portals then, they are only there to actually advertise the opportunities. So say, for example, you found an opportunity with Bradford Council on Contracts Finder, you'd read over the contract information, a bit more about the opportunity itself, figure out whether you think it's something that would be suitable to your organisation. But if you did then actually want to go on to bid for that opportunity, you would then go forward into using the individual council's procurement portal, which would in this case be your tender. Now, Contracts Finder, I'm going to speak a little bit about the two differences because there are two government hosted portals, that is Contracts Finder and Find a Tender. Contracts Finder, I will say, is the portal that's used to advertise the majority of opportunities, and that is usually anything from any opportunity worth £10,000 or above. And it's actually a requirement for central government to actually advertise any opportunity worth over £10,000 on Contracts Finder. So that's a must, there's no getting around that. There's also then Find a Tender. The Find a Tender service, the Find a Tender service is used for any opportunities worth over 118,000. But what I will say, and this is why I say that Contracts Finder is where you'll find the majority of opportunities, and that's because an opportunity that may be found on Find a Tender, there's every chance and it is likely to be also hosted on Contracts Finder as well. There isn't a limit on Contracts Finder, but there is a minimum on Find a Tender, if that makes sense. So I'm quickly going to skip over and just show a quick example of the Contracts Finder portal and show you how to navigate it and the certain things that you can use to narrow down the opportunities that you'd actually be looking at. Here we go. So this is Contracts Finder. This is the homepage for Contracts Finder and the first place that you'd come to when looking for an opportunity. So you can use Contracts Finder in a number of ways to navigate and narrow down the opportunities that you do actually see. So you can use keywords. So if, say, for example, we may be looking for training opportunities, we'd simply type training opportunities or training or development, growth, any words that stick out to us. You can select whether you want to look all locations that would be across the UK, whether you're looking just, say, for example, regionally. So in Yorkshire, you can select your opportunity, you can select the areas below there. Or you can be very specific. If I was only looking in my local area, I'd put my postcode in or my organisation's postcode. Again, then you can filter as to how far you want to be looking from that postcode if you are going to be using a postcode area specifically. And you can choose whether the opportunity that you're looking for is early engagement. I will come into the early engagement and why that may be an option on there a little bit later in today's session, whether it's a future opportunity, which is quite similar, or whether it's an opportunity that's available. If you do want to see contracts that have already been awarded for any reason, there is the option to do so as well. So that is very brief on Contracts Finder then. If we were to search, though, just to give you an example of the opportunities that are out there, if we have a look at all of the, apologies, it doesn't seem to want to let me search. There we go. So there's 2,206 opportunities at the moment across the UK, and the majority of those, what I always say to providers that I'm speaking with, the majority of those will not be relevant to the service that you offer, which is why there are lots of different filters that you can choose from, whether you are just specifying keywords or whether you are going to be specifying by what we would call an industry CPV code. I do just want to speak briefly about CPV codes. So a lot of people or a lot of providers may not have come across a CPV code before, and what a CPV code actually is, it stands for the Common Procurement Vocabulary, and it's, in layman's terms, a simple way of explaining the service that you offer. And there isn't actually necessarily just one code that would be relevant to your organisation. It may be that you match with a few, and I'll show you how that would work. I see CPV codes as kind of like a tree, and they branch off into different sectors, different services, and you can actually narrow it down from being something as broad as you can see here, so agricultural, farming, fishing, forestry and related products, which is very, very broad. You can use a CPV code to narrow down the specific service that you offer. So if it is farming, hunting and fishing products, you can narrow that again down even further to just cattle, livestock and small animals. So as you see, there's not one particular code that would work for you, because you could go for this vast number of opportunities or narrow it down using specific codes. I thought I'd mention that because when we do go into the demonstration of your tender in just a moment, you will also come across CPV codes as well when you are looking to navigate, or what we'd say set up alerts on your tender service. What I will also say is I am about to move over on to doing a demonstration for the Your Tender service. We've decided to do a demonstration of just the Your Tender service today, just with it being the portal that our local council uses. However, we do have on our YouTube channel tutorials covering many other procurement portals, so such as Artemis, as we discussed earlier, Jagger, we are getting that one uploaded in next week. We have Intend, we have My Tender, and I do believe we've also got Delta e-sourcing. So if you have a look through our YouTube channel on the back of today, if there is a particular portal you want to see, for any reason it's not already on our channel, please let us know and we can look at getting that created and uploaded for you as soon as possible. So as I said, I'm going to move over onto the Your Tender portal then now. Okay, so as you can see now, this is the Your Tender portal homepage. As you can see, we've already got an account, so we could log straight in, but we are going to assume that as a new supplier, we've never registered, we need to create an account, and that is where we then select new supplier registration. That will bring us to the page that you can see on your screen now. And the only reason we're going in depth into the registration part of the Your Tender system is to show what kind of pieces of information you're likely to be asked for when you're looking to register for a procurement portal. As I did mention earlier on in today's session, that the information you are asked for does tend to be pretty much the same across all portals. There may be just a few bits of information that may differ, or a few extra bits of information. For example, some procurement portals will ask for your website address, others may not care. And obviously that is an optional piece of information because not all providers will have our website to actually provide details of. So just a quick look through this one then now. So you're asked to confirm the type of organisation that you are, so whether you're a private company, sole trader, charity organisation, for example. You'd be asked for your company trading name, so I would be providing Growth Support Services Limited. That's the information that I provide there. I will add that anywhere that you see these red little asterisks at the end of a request, that is information that you must provide. You won't be able to register without providing these pieces of information. So your organisation number or VAT number, you can find your organisation number if you're not familiar with that on Companies House. A DUNS number, so a DUNS code, if you're not familiar with that, is the Dun & Bradstreet code. Not all organisations will have one of these, and that's why you'll see that it isn't marked with the red asterisk. But if you are interested in finding whether your organisation has a DUNS number, again, if you visit our YouTube channel, you can see a tutorial on finding your DUNS number on there. If you don't have a DUNS number, the video also shows you how to look at requesting a DUNS code for your organisation. So you're asked to confirm whether your organisation is an SME, so a small, medium, small or medium enterprise. You'll be asked to provide your company's address, postcode, the city and country, and within where you're located. Apologies. You then ask for a description of your organisation, so maybe the services that you offer, how you work, that kind of thing, and that is with a maximum of 500 characters. You then ask for company contact information, so a point of contact, a contact number, an email address. You can also test this just to make sure you've got the details correct if you're not sure for any reason. And then also some admin information, so who's going to be contacted basically as well. So first name, last name, their role within the organisation, a contact number, an email address, and the preferred language. Finally, you'll then be asked for administrative credentials, which is going to be your login details going forward. So as you could see, just skip back over to this page, your credentials would be your username and password that you use to log in once your account has then been created. And then email alerts, what we are going to do is once we've run over the registration, I'm quickly going to show how to set up alerts using Your Tender service. The email address that you provide here will be the email address that you receive notifications to. So if you're putting through that you want to know about training frameworks in the area, any new frameworks that are added, you'd be sent an email over to, and the email address that you provide here is where it'd be sent to. Terms and conditions, you'd be asked to read over those and confirm that you have read them and that you do accept them before submitting your information. I do believe, obviously, I'm not filling in the form whilst we are live today. I do believe once you've submitted your information, you'll receive an email address confirming your registration. You'll follow a link to activate your account, similarly to when you sign up for, say, social media accounts. So I'm going to come away from the supplier registration now and show you what your tender would look like once you have actually registered. So we'll select login on the home page, and you'll see that will fetch us to the Your Tender homepage. So the next thing I am going to run over and cover then in today's session is how to actually set up alerts using this service. And to manage your alerts, you would come to manage CTM tender alerts. Once you follow that link, you can see whether you already have alerts on or off. And usually, if you've only just created an account, it would look as it does now on my screen. So obviously, you want to change it to alerts being on. You want to confirm where you want the notifications to be sent over to. In my case, I've got my colleague Jill's email address down here. You can add extra emails if you want it to go to more persons within the company. And as you can see, as we discussed previously on the Contracts Finder website, CPV codes are also used here. That's why I said I'd come back to CPV codes. So to actually be able to set up alerts on Procurement Portals, you will need to specify a CPV code. So like you said, common procurement vocabulary. What you would do to figure out what codes are relevant to your service, you'd select Add CPV codes, and you would look through what I called the branches earlier today for the opportunities that sound relevant to you. So if you, as we'd said earlier, you work on a farm, if you supply I would say foods or cereal, that kind of thing, select on there and move forward and stagger it down to the specific service that you do offer. As I said, cereal, select that, and then your choice, add selected categories, and you can see I've now added that to my list. Once you've added the codes that are relevant, select done, read over the changes, done again, and that has saved. Once it's saved, it takes you straight back to the home page. As long as you've been redirected straight to the home page, you know that that's been created successfully. If you do want to double check, you can go back to Manage CTM Tender Alerts and check the CPV codes that are under there. So final thing then that I want to cover on your tender before we do move forward onto the next section of today's session is going to be how to actually find an opportunity. So if you have your alerts set up, but you also do want to check that there's nothing that's kind of slipped through and you've missed, you'd come to CTM Publish Tenders. You can see this open a second page, and you can see these are all of the active opportunities that are currently live on your tender, and that's with all of the councils that are using your tender service. So you can see Hull City Council, Sheffield City Council, West Yorkshire. Now, if you are looking for opportunities in a specific area, and as I said today, I am picking on Barnsley Council, I'm using them as an example today, I'm going to select more options under the filters here, and you can specify which specific buyer you want to look for opportunities with. So I'm going to scroll down to Barnsley Metropolitan Borough Council, select search, and you'll see there below, it's updated to only show Barnsley opportunities. There are other filters that you can use, so you can choose whether it's local to yourself, whether whether you're looking for already awarded contracts or you are looking for active contracts, which I assume would be the case 9 times out of 10. You can have a look at dates, so how long the opportunity's been active. If you knew a date that it went live, you can search specifically for that. You search countries, keywords, and again by CPV codes. Once you've found an opportunity that you are then interested in, so I'm interested in the provision of single-storey extension at Neville Avenue, we'll follow the link which will take you directly to the opportunity. You can then read below here more about the opportunity itself, and if I then believe that this was something of interest to me or my organisation, to actually get into the process of bidding, I would accept the opportunity. What I'm not going to do is actually accept this one in particular. I'm going to go back to an opportunity that we've already expressed interest in for any reason. So, for example, a support to live at home framework. Once you've accepted the opportunity, the screen would then look like as is on my screen now. So rather than there being the accept button under where you see now instructions, you'll see detailed instructions, and you can actually manage your response. Once you do first actually express interest in the opportunity, the first thing that you'd actually need to do is access the tender documents. The tender documents would be, say, for example, the application, the specifications, so you can read in much more detail about the opportunity and whether it is relevant to you, whether if you didn't feel that the description of the tender was good enough, or you couldn't figure out from that short description as to whether it was something that would work for your organisation. There is no problem with expressing interest in an opportunity to figure out more about it and whether it would work for you as an organisation. So never let that put you off. So you access the documents here, and you'll see these are all of the tender documents. Don't put you off. There might not always be this many documents, and the majority of these documents may not be relevant to all, because this is an opportunity with different lots. Lots are basically, it's an opportunity with different opportunities within one, and you may only apply for one opportunity out of maybe 5 that are on that. So you can download all of the tender documents, or as I've just said, if not all of the documents are relevant to you, you can download one by one. So that pretty much covers your tender demonstration, what I wanted to run over today. And what I will say is, if your tender specifically is something that you work with or want to know more about as well, do get in touch with us, as I said earlier today. What I am going to do is, because I have missed it out on my presentation actually, my email address and contact number. I will put my email address and contact number in the chat function before the end of today's session. But also it's not limited only to your tender. As we said, we do have guides and demonstrations from many other portals on our YouTube channel. But if there is anything specifically you want content wise, please do let me know and we'll create some content for you. Absolutely no problem. So I'm going to move back to the presentation now, move on to the next part of the presentation. So the next part of my presentation then today is engagement. So we're going to have a look at how you can engage with the public sector as a provider, ways in which you may do this, and the ways that we're going to be looking at today are networking events and social media. So although procurement portals are used in the majority of times to advertise opportunities, it's not the only way of actually staying in the loop with opportunities. So networking for one, or networking events, are a great way not only to stay in the loop with the opportunities that are being advertised from authorities, but they're also a great way to make yourself known to authorities, to have chats with the with your audience, or your target audience, should I say. Find out a bit more about what's important to them and whether your values actually align with the market that you're reaching out to. You can find out more about their goals and what they're looking for from providers, and figure out whether that's something that you're actually offering already, or whether is it going to be something that's possible? Are you right? Like, would your relationship gel well together, if that makes sense? So networking events there's many different types of networking events, but one type of event that I want to look into specifically today is a Meet the Buyer event. So Meet the Buyer events are a form of networking that an authority will host to promote an upcoming opportunity. So what they will do is they would advertise a Meet the Buyer event using maybe a procurement portal. So how I said on Contracts Finder earlier today, they'll advertise opportunities that you can bid for, or also via the Your Tender or Atomis or Delta Resourcing, for example. They may also advertise Meet the Buyer events and other networking events. They'll tell you what the event's going to be about, if it's about a specific opportunity, for example, but also these events may also be advertised via social media, and we will come on to social media in a few moments. But just to let you know a little bit more about Meet the Buyer events, if it's not something that you are aware of, because they can be really useful events to attend. What Meet the Buyer events actually do is give an opportunity to, give a provider an opportunity to ask questions. Meet the Buyer events will be based on a specific opportunity. So say, for example, the Support to Live at Home framework that we've just seen on Your Tender portal. Before that opportunity went live, there may have been a Meet the Buyer event for providers to attend. You would then meet the authority, or the contracting authority, should I say. They'll tell providers a little bit more about the opportunity that is upcoming, what they're going to be looking for providers, maybe what policies are going to be required. It gives providers to ask a bit more about maybe what insurances are going to be needed, what the specific requirements are going to be. And although the opportunity is not then live and ready to bid for, providers are then able to understand a lot more about what their requirements are going to be from them, ready for when the opportunity goes live. That way it kind of stops the panic of when an opportunity does go live and you've got, say, for example, 3 or 4 weeks to get your bid submitted. It releases the pressure because you've had a lot more time to prepare and plan for what is going to be coming. I'll just skip on to the wrong page, apologies for that. So another way then to look at engaging with your target audience or your customer is social media. Now, the public sector are starting to see the benefits of using social media platforms, say, for example, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. It's not something that's been used by the public sector too vastly in the past, but we're recently starting to see many more opportunities being advertised across these platforms, whether that is an actual opportunity that you would apply for via the Your Tender service, or whether it's an opportunity such as today, a learning session. We've recently, for example, hosted a lot of learning sessions alongside North Yorkshire County Council. All of the learning sessions that we hosted for this specific opportunity were like the majority of promotion that we did for them were advertised across social media, that being LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, also Instagram. But social media, I will say, as well, reaches out as far as to YouTube as well, and promotional videos and details of what may be coming up, maybe put into a marketing video and uploaded on your local provider or local authorities channel. So these platforms are also very easily accessible for providers, which is a great benefit for the public sector, because the procurement portals they're easily accessed, but they're not being accessed as often as a social media profile. We tend to find that the majority of providers are active on, say, for example, LinkedIn. Providers may be joining in conversations on LinkedIn, talking about their values and what their aims and goals are in their organisation. And if a public sector authority isn't actually on these platforms, they're missing out on a great opportunity to connect with the market. which is why it's a great idea if you're not already on these channels to get involved, create an account, get involved in conversations with your customers and the people that you want to work with. As I'd said in a networking event, social media can be used in a very similar way. That being that you can have these conversations about values, about the things that are upcoming, get involved, make your voice known. It can be a really great opportunity, and it plays a huge role in upcoming opportunities and goals. And I feel that we've absolutely sped through the information that we needed to actually cover today. And it does bring us to the end of the session. Some parts of the information that we've covered today have been brief, but what we wanted to get across in today's session was just the ways for you to actually access the public sector. So we've covered procurement portals, where you would actually find and bid for the opportunities, the government hosted portals, so where you'd be able to go to find all opportunities across the UK. So if you are using, just for example, and I will keep coming back to it clearly, your tender, if you're only using your tender, there is a lot of opportunity that you are then missing out on. Whereas if you're using Contracts Finder or Find a Tender, that is everything across the UK. Those 2,206 opportunities you'd be able to find, whittle down, and then navigate the portals from there. Social media, the benefits of using social media for your organisation, it's something not to miss. And also looking out for those networking events, using your social media to get involved with those networking events, and also just to give an overview of the public sector, who they are, what they buy, and to introduce ourselves, Go for Growth as an organisation, and the support that we can offer. As I've said, we offer one-to-one mentoring services, we offer content creation, and we're always posting new events, meetings, and whether that's in-person events or live events, live online events such as today's session. But what helps us is when you tell us what you're actually needing. So as a provider, the barriers that you're coming across, the things that providers are struggling with, it's really important for us to know what providers are needing support with, and then we can provide the content support and help in the various ways in which we do. So what I'm wanting to know now, is there anything in particular that you'd like to know on the back of today's session? Anything that you'd like to see us do in the future? I can see there is one question already in the Q&A, so I'm going to come to that, and also give a chance for any other providers on today's session to pop some questions in there. So James popped a question in: how many portals let you register subsidiary accounts so team members can log in, search and submit individually? So James, as you saw on your tender portal earlier in today's session, you could, to begin with, when you were actually registering, you could only add one main contact, but you could include a couple of different email addresses. Once you then actually registered and went to set up the tender alerts, you had the option to include extra emails. And actually the majority, or any that allow alerts, I don't believe I've come across any that actually limit the number of emails that are allowed on there. I would sometimes say that having a limit may be beneficial for your organisation, however, and obviously it may be different for each organisation, but if there is an organisation with many different people doing little bits and bobs, there's a chance that it could be miscommunicated who's applying for what, who's seeing what opportunities of interest to everybody. So as long as it's communicated well, I don't think it'd be an issue, but just something to bear in mind. But I do believe, I wouldn't say that it's a subsidiary account, but each member can access it separately with their own email address and login. I hope that answers the question, but if you need any further information, James, like I said, please do let me know, and do contact me on my email address or contact number, which I am just going to pop into the chat function now. Okay, so email address and contact number are both in the chat function for everybody now. If you've got any questions on the back of today's session, other than what's been asked already, do please get in touch, whether it is via email or telephone. If there is a voicemail, so for any reason you do call and you can't get through to me straight away, I will return your call as soon as possible. Like I'd said today, today's session is being recorded or has been recorded and will be sent out to everybody along with the slide deck. But please, as I've said, don't hesitate to let us know anything you would like to see from us in the future, content-wise, question-wise. We are more than happy to help and be really flexible in the support that we do provide. Now, that's actually brought us quite close to the end of today's session. It's a 45-minute session, so we do have up until past. But if there is no other questions from anybody at this point in time, we are able to end this session ever so slightly early and give yourself a chance to make a quick coffee before you are back to it. But thank you all very much for attending today. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.